From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired!
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Eric Ham in Washington, D.C. The race for the White House enters its final stretch while Russia looks to stretch its population. We'll get to that in a moment, but first, here's a look at the latest headlines. President Joe Biden approves $567 million worth of military aid for Taiwan. The aid includes training equipment, anti-armor weapons, and air defense systems. Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance and his Democratic rival Tim Walz will face off in their one and only debate on Tuesday. Hosted by CBS, the network has announced the debate moderators will not fact-check the candidates in real time. Hamas says Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon killed one of its top commanders. Israel confirms the Hamas leader was in fact responsible for coordinating the group's operations in Lebanon with Hezbollah members. Russian forces capture a village in East Ukraine and launch fresh waves of drone attacks on Kyiv. This as Vladimir Putin says Moscow will accomplish all of its goals set forth in Ukraine during the third year of conflict. And flash floods and landslides triggered by heavy rainfall kill at least 200 people and displace hundreds in Nepal. The devastation has forced the closure of schools across the country for 3 days. We begin in the Middle East. Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah was killed by an Israeli airstrike in Lebanon's capital, Beirut, on Friday. The attack was carried out when Nasrallah and several other Hezbollah leaders had gathered in a bunker located more than 60 feet underground.
To the holiest and most precious thing in our march that is full of sacrifices and martyrdom, we want you to continue jihad in the face of the enemy and in support of Gaza and Palestine, and in defense of Lebanon and its steadfast and honorable people. And to the honorable Mujahideen and the forgiven and victorious heroes of the Islamic resistance, you are trusted by the martyred Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, and you and your brothers were his impregnable shield and the jewel in the crown of heroism and sacrifice.
Now, according to reports, the strikes involved several intelligence agencies and meticulous planning by the Israeli military. Israel had real-time intelligence that the Hezbollah chief was actually gathering with his associates to discuss retaliation against Israel and express frustration for Iran's silence. Nasrallah convened the meeting to address the two serial device blasts that hit Hezbollah 2 weeks ago, killing dozens and injuring thousands. The Iran-backed group blamed Israel for the attack. However, Tehran implored restraint from responding with immediate actions. During the airstrikes on the Hezbollah chief, the Israeli Air Force used almost 80 tons of munition that included special bombs designed to penetrate deep into hardened structures. The attack consisted of a series of timed and chained explosions to kill the Hezbollah chief, whose death also prompted Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to shift to a more secure location. The final nod for the airstrikes was given by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was in New York to attend the UN General Assembly.
Yesterday, the State of Israel eliminated the arch-murderer Hassan Nasrallah. We have settled accounts with someone who was responsible for the murders of countless Israelis and many nationals of other countries, including hundreds of Americans and dozens of French. Nasrallah was not just another terrorist, he was the terrorist. He was the axis of the axis. the main engine of Iran's axis of evil. He and his people were the architects of the plan to destroy Israel. He was not only operated by Iran, he also frequently operated Iran. Therefore, at the beginning of the week, I came to the conclusion that the powerful blows that the IDF has been landing on Hezbollah in recent days were not enough.
However, Netanyahu's move was met with frustration in Washington as the Biden administration had been trying to restart ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hezbollah. In fact, White House officials said they were not informed about the strike beforehand, and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin even expressed this concern with his Israeli counterpart Yoav Gallant. President Joe Biden will now be talking to Netanyahu to avoid an all-out war in the Middle East.
Are you going to talk to Prime Minister Netanyahu? You haven't had anything to say to him?
Yes, I will be talking to him. I'll tell you what I say to him when I talk to him.
All-out war in the Middle East be avoided?
It has to be. We really have to avoid it. We've already taken precautions relative to our embassies and personnel who want to leave.
As Israeli airstrikes continue, Lebanon's prime minister says that as many as 1 million people have been displaced across the country. What happens next remains uncertain for the international community as civilians continue to suffer amid heightened tensions in the region. And here in the United States, the race for the White House marches on as former President Donald Trump once again launched personal attacks on Vice President Kamala Harris that have now sparked controversy. Speaking at a rally in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania, Donald Trump said that Kamala Harris was born mentally impaired and compared her actions to mentally disabled people.
Crooked Joe Biden became mentally impaired, sad. But lying Kamala Harris, honestly, I believe she was born that way. There's something wrong with Kamala. And I just don't know what it is, but there is definitely something missing. And you know what? Everybody knows it.
And now the Republican presidential nominee repeated the same insult at a campaign rally in Wisconsin as well. During the event, he also continued his anti-immigration rhetoric and said Kamala Harris should be impeached and prosecuted for felonies and misdemeanors.
She should be impeached and prosecuted for her actions. On day one of my new administration, the invasion ends and the deportations begin. We get them out.
Trump also referred to Harris as stupid, weak, and lazy, and falsely claimed that she had turned black. However, many Republicans, including Senator Lindsey Graham, distanced themselves from the remarks, saying Donald Trump should stick to electoral issues like the economy and immigration. Republican and former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, who's also in a heated battle for the Senate in Maryland, even said that Donald Trump's comments were not just insulting to Kamala Harris, but also to people with mental disabilities. Meanwhile, during a rally in Las Vegas, the vice president mocked Donald Trump's refusal to participate in a second presidential debate along with the decreasing crowd sizes at his rallies.
I'm trying to debate Donald Trump again, and I think he should debate again. The American people have a right to hear us discuss the issues. And as you say here in Las Vegas, I'm all in. I'm all in. Even if my opponent is ready to fold. So there you go.
Now, according to the latest New York Times Siena College poll, Kamala Harris is slightly ahead of Donald Trump in the battleground states of Wisconsin and Michigan. And as the race closes in on its climactic finale, polls continue to show an unclear picture of where the election actually stands. However, what remains certain is that Harris and Trump's back and forth will go down to the wire in just over 5 weeks. And staying in the United States, Hurricane Helene has wreaked havoc in the South, leaving at least 95 people dead, with more fatalities expected as recovery efforts continue. North and South Carolina remain the hardest hit, and nearly 2.2 million homes have lost power. Damage estimates range from $95 billion to $110 billion. A federal emergency is still in effect for Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and the Carolinas. Here's more on the storm's damaging aftermath.
The devastating wrath of Storm Helene has carved a path of destruction through at least 6 major states in the US, claiming the lives of at least 95 people, a number that is expected to rise in the coming days. Authorities report that the majority of the fatalities occurred in North and South Carolina, where Helene made a landfall as a tropical storm. North Carolina alone lost 37 people, with South Carolina following at 25, Georgia 17, Florida 11, Tennessee 2, and Virginia 1. US President Joe Biden has called the situation tragic.
Yes, it's tragic. Matter of fact, we're trying to get the exact number. My FEMA advisor is on the ground in Florida right now.
According to the tracker Power Outage US, as of Sunday, nearly 2.2 million households were left in the dark. While crews from the US Department of Energy are working tirelessly to restore power, officials warn the recovery will be complex and a multi-day process. North Carolina has suffered the brunt of Helene's fury. Hundreds of roads remain closed, with several bridges washed away by floodwaters. 4 major interstate highways have been shut down across the state, with several more closures reported in Georgia and South Carolina. Despite the deployment of emergency personnel to assist stranded residents, providing basic supplies like drinking water remains a challenge. In many areas, rescuers have been forced to airlift essentials due to impassable or flooded roads. Over 50 search teams have been dispatched in North Carolina alone, scouring the state for stranded residents. Hurricane Helene rode ashore late Thursday last week in Florida's Big Bend region as a Category 4 storm, with winds topping 140 miles per hour or 225 kilometers per hour. Though it weakened as it moved inland, Helene still packed a punch, devastating Georgia, the Carolinas, and Tennessee, with torrential rain that flooded rivers and strained dams and triggered widespread flooding.
It's 5 generations lived in this house, from my grandmother, my father, myself, my daughter, son, and my granddaughter. We was raised in this house. So there's a lot of memories here. It breaks your heart. It just devastates you.
Experts estimate that the damage from Helene could range between $95 billion and $110 billion, but a clearer picture will emerge once recovery efforts are complete. A federal emergency has already been declared in the affected states.
I want to remind all North Carolinians that conditions on the ground remain extremely dangerous, even as flooding has continued, and it will continue to recede. We ask people not to venture into storm-affected areas, whether to check on property, loved ones, or just to sightsee. Besides endangering yourself, you could also be interfering with emergency responders or repair crews.
Climate change has worsened conditions that fuel these storms, with warming waters allowing hurricanes to rapidly intensify into powerful cyclones. Officials warn that more storms may be on the horizon as hurricane season doesn't officially end until November 30th.
And Russia is tightening its grip on personal freedoms once again. And this time the target is those who choose not to have children. A new bill proposes harsh penalties on what Vladimir Putin's government calls child-free propaganda. Individuals who promote or defend the decision not to have children could face fines of over $4,000. For government officials, that number jumps to nearly $9,000, and for companies, the punishment can soar to more than $50,000. However, only those with religious, health, or traumatic exemptions like rape survivors can opt out of having children. The Kremlin is pushing this legislation as part of a wider plan to reverse Russia's shrinking population. And with the births at their lowest since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Putin is urging his government to make large families fashionable once again. Recently, Putin advocated families to have at least 7 to 10 children, and officials rolled out new policies to help meet that goal. One such policy is to encourage working women to start new families by partaking in conjugal breaks during office hours. The latest bill also seeks to limit birth control. Now abortions would only be allowed in state-run clinics. However, at least 10 states have already banned abortion. The bill would even restrict access to cases involving severe health risk, incest, or rape, with the cutoff for abortion being reduced to 9 weeks instead of the current 12. So as Russia goes all out to reverse its dwindling population, the Kremlin has issued a clear message: procreate or pay up. And finally, NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore are set to return to Earth as SpaceX's Dragon capsule successfully docked at the International Space Station. The Falcon 9 rocket lifted off from Florida and is tasked with bringing the stranded astronauts back home in February. This will mark another milestone for SpaceX's ongoing partnership with NASA. Here's our final report on more.
It was a mission that was supposed to be routine. Just 8 days in space aboard Boeing's new Starliner capsule. But for NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore, that mission turned into an unexpected and extended stay. Shortly after Williams and Wilmore arrived at the ISS, problems started to emerge. The Starliner began to show signs of trouble, including helium leaks and malfunctioning thrusters. After weeks of testing and assessing the capsule's condition, NASA made a difficult decision. It wasn't safe to bring Williams and Wilmore back to Earth in the Starliner.
Failure is not an option. That's why we are staying here now.
Forward heat shield and drogues out.
The capsule would return empty, leaving the 2 astronauts stranded in orbit.
Touchdown. Starliner is back on Earth.
While NASA engineers worked to troubleshoot the Starliner, the 2 astronauts made the most of their time aboard the ISS, contributing to ongoing experiments and helping with daily operations. But as the months passed, it became clear that their homecoming would require a different plan. Enter SpaceX. With their reliable Dragon capsule, already a proven method of shuttling astronauts to and from the space station, the company was called upon to assist. And after several months of preparation, the Dragon was ready. The launch of SpaceX's Crew 9 mission finally took place on a Saturday afternoon from Cape Canaveral, Florida. Lifting off aboard the Falcon 9 rocket. Aboard the Dragon were NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Russian cosmonaut Alexander Gorbunov. They were tasked with a 2-part mission: join the ISS crew and, most importantly, bring Williams and Wilmore back home. Then, after a smooth journey, the Dragon capsule docked with the ISS at precisely 17:30 Eastern Time on Sunday, 265 miles above Botswana in southern Africa. Inside the space station, there were smiles all around, as Hague and Gorbunov were greeted by their fellow astronauts, and the relief palpable after months of uncertainty.
Welcome to the International Space Station, and Nick, welcome back home to the International Space Station. It's great to be here with bringing the 72 back up to 11.
So first off, I just want to say thank you to the teams that got us ready to fly Freedom to the station, and it was a awesome ride. And coming through the hatch and seeing all the smiles, and as much as I've laughed and cried in the last 10 minutes, I know it's going to be an amazing expedition, so I'm really looking forward to getting to work up here.
NASA has already confirmed that Williams and Wilmore will be returning home in February,
Next February.
ending their unexpected 8-month stay in space. In the meantime, Hague and Gorbunov would spend 5 months on the ISS, diving into scientific research with around 200 experiments planned for their mission.
So I'm very happy to be here in this huge, amazing laboratory, International Space Station. And I'm looking forward to working with this crew, Expedition 72, and with people who are supporting us on the ground, MCC Houston, MCC Moscow.
While it was a moment of triumph for SpaceX, it's also a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of space travel. Boeing's Starliner has faced setbacks, but the stranded astronauts are finally on track to return home, where Boeing failed, but SpaceX delivered.
Touchdown. Starliner is back on Earth.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired.
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.
Firstpost decodes the U.S. election, explains how America chooses its president. Your primer on the race to the White House. Everything you need to know about how America votes and its global implications. U.S. Election Explained. Every Monday and Thursday only on Firstpost.
Hello and a very warm welcome. I am Gushin Garland and you're watching Firstpost. In the next few minutes, we bring you the top 50 updates from around the world only here on Fast and Factual. Let's get started. Big updates coming in from West Asia. Israel hit an apartment block in the Lebanese capital Beirut in its